Hello and welcome to another video. So today I'm excited to start my reading vlog for the fourth book in the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan, The Shadow Rising. I said at the end of my last vlog that I was not going to be jumping into The Shadow Rising immediately after finishing The Dragon Reborn, and that it would probably take a while for me to start the fourth book. Well, that's not true. We jumped straight into The Shadow Rising because it is my boyfriend's favorite book, so he was very excited to start it. And we tried to start the Witcher series, but he just wasn't into it because he really wanted to read The Shadow Rising. So we'll take our break after The Shadow Rising. That being said, The Shadow Rising is the longest book so far, so this vlog may still be out significantly later than any of my other vlogs. There may still be a longer period in between the filming and the release, just because it's going to take us so much longer to read this book. I also apologize if you can hear the lawnmower outside. They're doing lawn work, but if I don't film this now, I'm going to, one, lose the daylight, and two, just not do it. And I need to do this. I feel like my last two videos, the updates were too long each day, and my reactions were too far removed from the specific day when I read those chapters. So I have only been reading this book for a couple of days, and we are only 100 pages in or so, and like 2 or 3 chapters in. So I think this is a good place to start the update, and I didn't want to wait any longer. So that's why I'm doing that now. And if you can hear the lawnmower, just ignore it. It won't be in the rest of this video. But The Shadow Rising, longest book we have read so far, or are going to be reading. It is, in this version, like 1,000 pages. I really love the covers. I love the covers. I love the combinations of the embossing and the color of the actual background. The pages are thinner, so I think it's really wild how the next 3 books are longer in length than the first few books, but together in their box sets, the box sets actually take up the same amount of space. So these pages are thinner, even though the book is longer. This is my boyfriend's copy of The Shadow Rising. It has a far more illustrated cover. I have no idea what's going on this cover. In the back, you can see that when this book was published, all of the books weren't even out. This only goes down through book 11. And then this book is actually pretty cool because he has a colored map on the inside. So in the past, you've seen that the edition of The Dragon Reborn or The Great Hunt, one of those 2 editions, I think it's The Great Hunt. The edition of The Great Hunt that my boyfriend owned had a very, very bare map. It was just a few lines and it was not detailed at all. This is in stark contrast. This one is super full color, detailed image of a map. Mine is the same standard map that has been in every edition of this book that I have owned so far. And it continues to look just like that. So some detail, but still definitely black and white. Here are the 2 side to side. I've mentioned that my editions are strangely proportioned for a mass market paperback, but this is really the difference. And now we can get into the first few chapters. So to be specific, I have read the first 3 chapters. One of the things that was weird from the beginning is that The Shadow Rising does not start with a prologue. Now, chapter 1 was very prologue-like. It didn't really get us into the main anything. In chapter 1, we were really just kind of exploring what was going on with side characters. We didn't see any of our main characters. We just had a few random perspectives that's kind of like, in the background, this is happening. And we saw a few things that I hadn't expected to see for a while. We're back in Tarvalon for a bit. We see Min arrive at Tarvalon in order to update the Amerlin seat. What's happening with Rand? She started this journey at the beginning of The Dragon Reborn. She was just gone the rest of the book, but in this book we see her get there. She is now just with the Amerlin seat. As she's walking through, she sees in her visions that surround people destruction coming to Tarvalon. She sees multiple people she passes with futures of serious injury or death, all on the same day. She doesn't know which day, but she knows that it happens at the same time, and it's this concurrent climactic event or catastrophic event. So no idea what's going to happen. She sees the collars that the Shan used on Egwene and other Aes Sedai they captured. So that's interesting because it seems to imply that they might be involved, or at the very least, their technology. And shortly after that, we get a look at the Shan. So they've like taken their armies to kind of recover on some nearby islands, it seems like. And they have a new leader, and she is still set on reclaiming the lands. She has not given up. She does not want to tell their empress, I think it's an empress that they're ruled by, that they have failed. She sent a scout out to update that the first leader died and failed, but she's there now, and she's going to take them to do whatever it is they set out to do, reclaim the lands, that kind of thing. I think there was one more in perspective, but I don't remember it. When we start the book, we're with Perrin, or chapter 2. When we start chapter 2, we are with Perrin and Fail. We get a bit more of a glimpse into their relationship. It's developed a little over the past 2 or 3 days, maybe since the end of the 3rd book. And they're all right. They're like not perfect, but at the same time, for the way gender dynamics exist in this book, I forgive them. It's weird. I don't like the gender dynamics in this book, but at the same time, their relationship within the setting that they're in it's all right. And I just love them as characters so much. So I was excited to see that. And then maybe the craziest thing that just has ever, I was so floored by it. They get attacked by Perrin's axe, which just starts trying to fling itself at him. And then when he tries to push it away, it decides, okay, I'm going to fling myself at Fail. And it kind of hops between both of them until Perrin pushes Fail out of the room and then just fights the axe until it seems to grow tired and lodges itself in a door. So then he's like, wow, is Rand already going crazy? And I hate that. So hold that thought, because next we're going to talk about Matt. And Matt has been gambling. He is trying to collect enough money to just leave, set out on his own, and not have to deal with any of this anymore. And he's playing cards with some wealthy lords of the stone, and he gets attacked by the images in the cards, the card faces, climbing out of the cards, growing to like full-size people size, but still being two-dimensional, and attacking him. So he destroys a couple of them, and then they also just kind of disappear and get tired, or whatever magic they were running off of is exhausted. And then he is also like, wow, what is this? Is Rand trying to kill me? And I just, I think, I don't know. And Matt acknowledges this. Matt acknowledges how he has, like, how he's not really being a friend to Rand anymore because he is too busy being afraid of Rand. And for Matt, that's smart. He thinks he's being smart. And I can't say that he's wrong, but at the same time, it just hurts my heart how easily both Perrin and Matt just kind of assumed that it was very likely the reason these events were happening is because Rand is probably off somewhere, losing control of his magic, going crazy, and attacking them. And it just doesn't make sense. Because even within the laws of the world, and then my boyfriend pointed out to me that Matt and Perrin aren't the most well-versed in how the One Power works. They don't understand it at all. So I can kind of forgive them for it, but it's still sad, right? So the first flaw in their argument is that Rand has so little control of his power that there's no way he can actively do anything to anyone from such a distance. They're separated by a couple floors and several hallways worth of this giant fortress. Rand is not reaching them with his power. Second, if Rand truly lost control of his power, why would that loss of control result in such specific targeting? These weren't random things causing chaos. They were attacking Perrin and Matt. And I always do these vlogs kind of hunched over my desk because it's easiest for me to whip out a quick update at my desk. But to get the angle of my body in the frame properly, I have to kind of be leaning forward since my camera is at an angle. And I fell down some stairs yesterday, so my chest hurts. And this bending is going to cause me some problems. So I will try to be quick on this wrap up. You'll see lots of editing jumps because I have to stop leaning forward. So yeah, patience with this whole filming situation. So it doesn't make sense for them to assume that it's just Rand. And there are so many things that could be wanting to attack them. So many. They are Taviran. They just conquered a fortress. They are the Dark Ones out there, and he's willing to hurt anyone. That's kind of his deal. So the fact that they just kind of instantly are like, oh, Rand, when like, I don't know why people don't have more faith in Rand. I mean, yeah, things are going to happen, but they're not going to happen instantly. No one ever said that male Aes Sedai instantly go crazy and murder everybody. Time passes and they unravel. At least that's been what I have inferred from the events that we've seen. So, and it's not much, but still, there's no reason for me to feel like he's just going to instantly snap. So I just find it odd. So that happens, and they go to go to confront Rand. Matt actually is just kind of off on his own, trying to decide if he wants to flee, whereas Perrin heads over to confront Rand and figure out what's going on. And the entire time he's walking over there, he's making this conversation already way more awkward than it has to be. He's walking over there thinking to himself, how am I going to talk about this to Rand? Do I ask him, why did you attack me? Are you going crazy? That's such a confrontational way to start this kind of conversation, especially since Rand is his friend, and especially since he has no evidence that Rand did anything. Like, he could easily just go up and be like, hey Rand, this crazy thing happened to me. Do you know anything about it? What do you think happened? And then Rand's gonna say, oh, my bad, I was doing something with the power, or no, I have no idea, or whatever. They could talk about it, but he is really coming into this conversation convinced it's Rand's fault. So of course it's an awkward conversation to start when you've already decided how it's going to end. You know what I mean? Anyway, we spent some time with Rand. We get a Rand chapter. I was excited about that because I have missed his point of view chapters. And he gets attacked by reflections of his climbing out of mirrors and barely survives that. They all had swords and they all had his skill, so he was fighting off like 3 or 4 of himself, and he barely survived, mostly because he like absorbed them, which I don't fully understand. I don't think he fully understood what that meant, but he got rid of them. And they attacked him while he was talking to this woman. I forget her name. I cannot pronounce it. Starts with a B. I think she's like the high lady, first lady of some country. She's there visiting, and she came in very aggressively attempting to seduce Rand, and I don't really know why. I don't know what she sought to gain out of this interaction. That was unclear because then they got attacked. It wasn't clear if she was just into Rand and wanting to just pursue that interest, or if she was trying to do some kind of political game. I don't know what her deal was, but she left once the attack stopped, really freaked out. Understandably so. She also had like the hardest time taking no for an answer. So I don't fully understand what she's doing. But Perrin gets there and he sees Rand has been attacked. He sees Rand is bleeding. At the end of the Great Hunt, Rand sustained a very serious wound in his side that has not really fully healed at all, and it got reopened during this attack, so he's bleeding out on the floor. Perrin stops to help him. He's trying to stop the blood. He sends someone to get Moraine, and still kind of thinks that this is the result of Rand losing control of his power. Moraine comes in, and the first thing she says is, "What did you do? You have to be careful." And it's like, Rand didn't do anything. And he tells them that he didn't do anything, and he suspects it's the Forsaken. But then Moraine reveals that what she actually thinks is happening is that because the locks on the Dark One's prison are breaking, his power is slipping out. And so Moraine thinks what they're seeing here is the result of these little bubbles of dark power. It's kind of slipping out of the Dark One's prison and causing chaos and attacks. And because Mat, Rand, and Perrin are Ta'veren, as strong as they are, they're also more likely to attract this kind of weird, chaotic bubble energy. Which is kind of scary because it happened to them and they are kind of primed to expect to be attacked. Mat and Perrin are both expecting Gran to just up and kill them. So like, they are used to being in danger, but these attacks and these bubbles, they went to them first and most strongly because of how they're Ta'veren, but there's nothing to stop them from happening to just about anybody. And as the Dark One's prison weakens, that's what they expect to happen, that this energy and this power is going to start targeting people in random places for random reasons. People are going to encounter nightmarish things, and chaos is really going to descend. And that's part of why the Dark One is so dangerous and why they don't want him to get out. And they're starting to see what the world would look like if he did. So that's wild. I think that this has been the most action-packed first 100 pages of a Wheel of Time book of all the 3 that I've read. Most of the first beginning of the books are like fairly slow. The first 3/4 of each book has been fairly slow. And then the last 100 pages or so, things typically pick up. But in this book, we start with like 3 different chapters of people being attacked. And so stuff is happening from the very beginning. And I don't know what's going to continue to happen. It's called The Shadow Rising. So that's fitting, right? Because we're seeing these bubbles of energy pop up. That's like the shadow's power, presumably. I don't know. We see Nynaeve and Gwyn down in the dungeons, questioning 2 dark friends that they picked up who are also Black Audra. One of them was gentled and the other is being held captive and like super still so that she cannot channel. She's being blocked so she can't channel. And they aren't really learning anything from them, except that one of them seems to believe that somewhere out there, there's a false dragon that other members of the Black Aja and Dark Friends are going to put out into the world, proclaim him as the true dragon, and give him the name Rand al'Thor. So he's basically going to impersonate Rand, cause destruction, chaos, and kill people, so that people will turn against Rand, and he won't have the support of the people, and it will be much easier to kill him. This is the second time we've seen that kind of plot happen, which is really wild across 2 different sides, if it's true. Right, Egwene and Nynaeve aren't 100% certain that she's telling the truth. But if she is, that means that there's these dark friends plotting to isolate Rand so that he can be killed. And then in The Dragon Reborn, we saw people from the Children of the Light plotting to wait for and encourage Rand to destroy people and go crazy and kill people, so that they could swoop in and kill him and be heroes. So now there are 2 different sides of supposedly the light, but like a definite corrupt version of the light and the dark trying to kill Rand. Something interesting about these first few chapters, though, is that we see Rand not letting himself be pushed around by Moraine anymore. Rand has proclaimed himself the Dragon Reborn, not just in action and like passive acceptance, but like very vocally at the end of The Dragon Reborn. He has Kalendor. He's fulfilled the prophecy for this land. That's one of the first signs that he is the Dragon Reborn. And he's pretty convinced. Most people are pretty convinced. And that means that he's kind of done being pushed around by Moraine. Even in things so little as him being attacked and her saying that he needs to change rooms so that this one can be cleaned. He's like, no, I'm going to sleep here. I am tired of being chased around the world, and I'm not being chased out of my room. And she thinks he's stubborn and she thinks he's being unreasonable, but she doesn't fight him more than that, which I like. I think it's really cool. I hope to see a strong Rand character in this book. We have had so many different versions of Rand, right? We saw Rand just kind of being his shepherd self in the first book. We saw Rand being his reluctant leader self in the Great Hunt, and then we didn't see Rand at all in the Dragon Reborn. But when we saw him, it was kind of a sad puppy Rand. Like, he was just running, being chased, killing people who were attacking him, living in the rain. He was having a bad time in the Dragon Reborn. And then in this book, I hope we see more of like a commander Rand, who is like ready to start leading like armies. That's what I want to see. I don't know what we're gonna see. My boyfriend told me that of all the versions of Rand he has seen, this one in this book is his second favorite, I think, the way that Rand is in this book. And so I'm excited to see how his character continues to develop. I'm still very interested in Perrin and Fail's relationship. Right now they're probably going to get split in this book, which is going to make me sad, like just by distance, because Perrin is convinced that he has a part to play in everything that's coming up. He has to stay near Rand. Fail is in danger though, and she doesn't have anything to do with this, and she doesn't want to stick around. So she's trying to convince Perrin to run away with her, but even though Perrin agrees that she needs to leave and she should leave, he doesn't want to leave, or he doesn't feel like he can or should. So they're probably going to get split up. It's sad, but it does make sense. So we'll see how that plays out. And I think that's everything. So it's only been like 100 chapters. I don't know how long this vlog is going to be. This book is so long. We'll see. I'm filming this on May the 29th. So I started this book on maybe 27th, I believe. And we'll see exactly how long it takes me to film this. So I'll see you the next update. Alright, another vlog update for The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. I am now on chapter 12. And I think since the last time I updated this, I've read like 6 or 8 chapters. Egwene and Rand are done. I am so happy. I don't think I've made it a secret that I'm not a fan of Egwene in general as a character, but especially not a fan of Egwene and Rand. And that romantic thread is gone. They ended it by basically Egwene telling Rand that she didn't want to hurt him, but she doesn't want to marry him. Like, they've kind of been taking for granted, like just assuming they were ultimately going to end up together. She lets him know that not only does she not want to marry him, but she also isn't in love with him in that way, not anymore, or not like she thought she would be. She cares for him like a brother, but does not want to marry him. And then Rand is like, wow, what a coincidence. This is so great. I also don't want to marry you, and I'm not in love with you. So, good. And he's a little, like, conflicted because he does feel a little hurt, even though it doesn't make sense because he doesn't love her like that. It was still kind of disappointing to him that she didn't love him, which is a funny idea. I think that I kind of get where he's coming from. Like, it would just be kind of weird if anyone kind of told you they didn't love you when you thought that they had, but he doesn't hold it against her. What was kind of annoying in that scene is that Egwene responds by thinking that it's so silly, or it's so nice that he is saying this thing, like, even if he doesn't believe it, like how strong he's trying to act or something like that. And she just didn't really believe that he wasn't actually not in love with her. She thinks he's just saying that. Why would he just say that? Why can't it also just be true? Like, Egwene is not that great. So, still not an Egwene fan, but they're done. We've also gotten so many more Ram chapters, which I very much appreciate because there are some wild things going on with him. Basically, Moraine is pushing him to start a war with Ilian. I think it's Ilian, because one of the Forsaken is ruling and he's going to attack Rand sometime anyway. So Moraine is just like, attack him first. But Rand doesn't want to start a war. And in the last chapter that I just finished, he leaves by telling Moraine that the next day he will tell her what he intends to do, because he has been very indecisive and there has been an attack. So Trollocs and Fades attacked the stone and several people died. Rand saved the day with this like crazy cool move with the one power where he developed these like crazy storm clouds that then shot lightning and killed every enemy. But prior to that, plenty of people died and it was quite a devastating attack. And so that kind of woke him up because he felt guilty about not having moved before. If he had done something before, he might have been able to put off that attack. So Rand's finally ready to make a move, and I have no idea what that move is. I kind of feel like Moraine was onto something. So whatever he's going to do that isn't start a war, I'm not sure what it is. Egwene and Rand are done, but Rand and Elaine are a thing, and I'm considering it. They're okay. They have had a few chapters together and really they're just kind of hanging out because Elaine has to leave very soon. The captured Aes Sedai, the Black Ajah that they have been having imprisoned, are going to be moved elsewhere. They're going to go back to Tar Valon, and Elaine, Nynaeve, and Egwene are going to be following along with them, I believe is the plan. So Elaine's going to have to go. She can't stay with Rand, and so neither of them is willing to commit to something long-term, at least not outright, because they don't know what that will look like. But you know, they're having a good time, they're kissing in corners, they're hanging out, whatever, and that's okay. I find Elaine to be all right on her own. I don't like Elaine when she is with Egwene and Nynaeve. They make her act very much like them. And I know Matt has considered her kind of haughty anyway because she is the heir of Andor and she like talks like it and walks like it, you know, like very in an arrogant way. But still, I feel like that's exacerbated when she's with Egwene and Nynaeve. So that has happened. It's everything. Really, I'm very interested to see the things Rand is doing with the One Power. I think those are really cool. It's also kind of sad though, because the more he uses the power, the faster he is going to suffer the effects of the taint on Satan. So it's kind of hard to both want to see it and also want Rand to be okay. I don't know how to justify both those wants and how to like make them one thing. They just kind of contradict each other. But still, it's pretty cool. The thing he did with the lightning during the attack was very cool. I'm also really enjoying seeing the Ale more often and getting a sense of those characters and what they're like. I really like Avienda, who is one of the Ale that has been hanging out with Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine sometimes. She like protects them or follows them. I don't know. But she has been pretty interesting. And very recently, Egwene was doing a like dream walk thing to see if she could find anything out about a place that they are thinking about traveling to, because the members of the Black Ajah said that there was some kind of plot happening there. I can't remember or pronounce the city's name, but she was walking it in a dream to get more familiar with it and to see if she could stumble across anything that might be helpful to them. And she ran across this Ale woman who is a wise one and wants Egwene to go meet her so that she can teach her how to do this dream stuff. And I don't know. if Egwene has decided whether to do that or not. I think that she doesn't, it's just out of her way, so she doesn't really want to, but it could also be incredibly valuable for her to really understand what's going on in these dreams. So I don't know what she's going to do, but I'm very excited to see what Rand's move is going to be, because I'm not really sure what I would do in that situation. I think I probably would have just gone with Moraine's idea, which isn't the best. I mean, war, but also they're going to attack him, so I don't know what he plans to do. Okay, so I'm finally doing another update on the Shadow Rising. It has been so long, I don't even remember where I was when I last did an update, but where I am now is just past like chapter 37, and Rand has been through Ruidian. So he went into the like Ale people's thing, like the place they go into in order to become a clan chief if they can make it through. And it was the wildest couple of chapters. He goes in and there are like flashbacks where he's seeing the rise of the Ale, and every time he goes forward through the, I guess it's like a cave thing, every time he goes forward he goes back in time and he lives a memory of someone from way back when the Ale were founded. And it was wild. He keeps going back in time, and it's kind of cool because you see like one person is the perspective of whoever the perspective is from, and in that perspective they might see or talk about another person who is older, and then you go back and now you're in that person's perspective, and the person whose perspective you were originally following is young in this other perspective, because you're going back in time with each perspective that you see. And as you do that, you come to find out lots of things about the Ale and how they have evolved as a civilization, especially how they started as a super peaceful, pacifist people, which is wild because the Ale, as we see them in the Shadow Rising, are these traveling warriors, essentially, and they're fearsome fighters, and they came from people who did not fight. They followed the way of the leaf, which is super interesting because in the Great Hunt, or maybe the Eye of the World, we met the traveling people who also followed the way of the leaf, and they are in the wetlands searching for the songs, the lost songs of their people. And that's interesting because in the flashbacks we see the Ale talking about how they used to be singers and they don't sing anymore, and those songs are lost. And there is this group of people in one of the flashbacks who are going to go back and search. They like divide off from the main people because they are going to go search for these songs again, because they feel like they've lost that part of themselves. And so now there's like this, there seems to be this connection between the Ale and the traveling people, which I did not expect. And you also see things like the breaking of the world and how the chaos afterwards meant that the Ale were charged with protecting the Angral and like magical little instruments that the Aes Sedai used. The Ale were charged with protecting them because male Aes Sedai were trying to get them, and they were going crazy, so they couldn't have these powers, these little figures that amplified their power, because that would make their destructive power even worse as they fell into the sickness. So that was wild. And then I was wondering, at the end of the Great Hunt, I believe, Moraine made a comment about how Lews Therin fixed the hole that men put into the Dark One's prison, and it was not clear to me at the time what that meant, how that hole got put there. And in these flashbacks we saw it. We saw that hole get put there. The bore happened because Aes Sedai thought that they had found a power that was a source of the one power that both men and women could draw from, but it was actually the source of power that was holding up the Dark One's prison. So they start to draw from this power and they start to release him and cause holes to occur in his prison. And then after that, all kinds of mess is released. His dark influence and chaos is released into the world. You've got the Trollocs and the Midgeral, and they're all out there, and they got released because of these holes. And then they have to go and fix them. So that was wild because it was just their fault. Like, I have always thought that the holes in the Dark One's prison was just him spending millennia kind of ramming against the walls and eventually kind of wearing it down and the magic deteriorating, and that's not what's happening. So that's wild. And now the seals that were put in place are being broken again. And it's unclear to me if those seals are broken, are we going to see a return to when they were originally broken and like things are seeping out, but the Dark One wasn't freed? Like he was still kind of trapped, but like not fully trapped. Or if those seals are broken, is he just going to be able to completely tear down his prison and escape? I don't know. I don't know what that's about. And then you've got Matt, who got tricked by these people. He walked into a doorway that was like another doorway back in Tyr. He wanted to get questions answered, and then he didn't get the responses he wanted. So he got really angry and kept asking more and more questions that didn't lead to any more productive answers, really, except the knowledge that he had to go into Viridian. So he did that, and he follows Matt in there, and he follows Rand in there. And he finds another doorway that he decides to just waltz into. But instead of answering questions, it turns out that these people do things. They like grant wishes. And he wanted to be free of the Aes Sedai and the One Power. He wanted to get out of there where he physically was. And then he wanted to do one more thing. And their solution was to hang him and kill him, because then he would be free of all the things that he had asked them to free him of. So that was definitely not what he meant. And that was a twist of his words. So Rand saves him because he happens to get there in time. And at first I thought that Rand seeing Matt in a tree was just this illusion. Like Rand was facing some kind of final test or something. But it wasn't. It was really Matt. He was really in trouble. So they got him out, and they are now escaping across the desert back to where they started. And that was wild. Those chapters were wild. And I'm not sure yet what Rand expects to gain from this. I don't know why he insisted on going to Viridian. Egwene is waiting to be trained by Amis, who is a dreamer, and said that she would help her learn how to dream. Other people that traveled into Viridian to do other things included Moraine, and then the Isle, who became Egwene's friend. And I forget her name. So that's going on. And then the Perrin, Fael, and Loyal are traveling the ways, and they had to get. So like Perrin wasn't going to let Fael come with him to the Two Rivers, which I think was dumb, because he was convinced that he was going to the Two Rivers to die, and he didn't want her to see that, or to die trying to stop it from happening. I think that he was not creative enough, because then he gets joined by one of the Ale, the one he freed from the cage in The Dragon Reborn. I forget his name. It starts with a G. He gets his help, and suddenly he's like, well, if we have an Ale on our side, and there might be another one, maybe things aren't going to be quite as dire. And it's like, yeah, Perrin, I don't know why you aren't trying to get any help at all, because I feel like you're definitely way too deterministic about what's going to happen when you don't know anything. Never mind that letting Fael come and talking to her could mean that she could contribute something that would lead in you not dying. So I don't know why you're being so weird. So he was being really stubborn about that. And then Fael went behind his back and was kind of not cool in how she manipulated Loyal into swearing to take her into the ways. And so that meant that when Perrin came to ask Loyal to help him, Loyal was bound to take Fail in as well, and so he does that, and they're now traveling together, and they're kind of being pretty petty because Fail will let Perrin come with them, but she only wants him to join their party if he specifically asks her if he can come along, even though this whole plight is his and his idea. So yeah, and they're basically like not talking to each other. It's kind of dumb, but then when they finally do get to the ways, Perrin enters and then walks off far enough that they wouldn't be able to see him when they followed in after, because he wants to scare Fail into thinking that he went off without them and could potentially get lost and hurt. So he's trying to freak her out. Honestly, I find it all kind of amusing and a little dumb, but I'm still pro Fail and Perrin, and I hope that everything's alright because I love them. And Loyal, because they've dragged him onto this new adventure, and he just wants to sit and write his book. So I'm a little worried about him, but that's where we left them. It's been a long time since we've seen Perrin, Fail, and Loyal. There was some weird... So, like, there are these people fighting over Rand, right? You've got Egwene, who only recently let go of Rand. You have Elaine, who is after Rand, but in, like, this weird, mind-bending, manipulative kind of way. Like, they were hanging out before she left to go to Tanchico with Nynaeve, and then she went to tell Rand that she had to go to Tanchico and that nothing was going to stop her. And so then he was just like, all right, cool, I'll see you when you get back. And she got so upset that he just let her go without fighting her. But why would he fight her? She said she was going to go. He wasn't going to stop her. I thought that was like, I feel like the most respectful thing he could have done was just say, awesome, great, I'll see you when you get back. And she didn't like that. So I don't like, she wanted him to ask her to stay even though she knew she wasn't going to stay. So why put them through that exercise? I don't get it. So she's being weird about that. And you also have Min, who's still in Tar Valon but claims to be in love with Rand, who is currently pretending to be a lady, like in hiding at Tar Valon so that she can't eavesdrop on people and use her power of like foresight to learn things for the Amerlin seat. And then you've got like that whole situation, right? But now you have Perrin, who is with Fail but is now being pursued by Berylane, who had pursued Rand. So I don't actually know what Berylane's agenda is. Like, what does she want? I don't get it. Is she just likes to randomly seduce people? I don't know what her agenda is. And then she and Fail got into this ridiculous confrontation in a hallway where they were about to fight each other, like physically fight each other. It was wild. I did enjoy it more though. Like, I feel like the first chunk of the Shadow Rising, when everyone was at Tyr, you saw so much more of their interpersonal relationships coming to the surface and like conflicts and things like that, which I particularly enjoyed reading about, than you have in much of the other chunks of the books. And I feel like there hasn't really been a slow part in the Shadow Rising so far. Like, things are happening. And that's pretty wild. It's a shift in pacing. And I find that a relief because I like slightly faster books. Alright, so this vlog update is a little overdue, but we need to talk about chapters 27 through 32 in the Shadow Rising. I think in my last update I said I thought I was on chapter 37. I was way off. It was more like chapter 27. But chapters 27 through 32 are mostly Perrin's perspective. I thought they were the wholesome of Perrin's perspective, but there's one more chapter, I think, from Perrin's perspective. And it picks up with them traveling through the ways. And oh my god. I can't fathom to just, okay. So they they're traveling through the ways, right? Okay, because they're trying to get to the two rivers. And then this happens. We get to them, and they've been traveling for like 3 days already. And then there's a flashback where Perrin is thinking to the last time we saw them, which is when he wandered off down the ways because he wanted to freak Fail out and to make her think that he had just kind of wandered off without them and could get hurt. So he was doing that because she's being kind of irritating. It's a hard situation. I have expressed my undying loyalty for Perrin and Fail together, and yet at the same time, they're being dumb. Like, I get why Fail is angry, right? Perrin is trying to keep her from coming with him to the two rivers, and I do not think that is the move. I know that he thinks that she could get hurt or whatever, but like, one, I'm sure she's capable of assessing risk on her own, and two, I think she can be helpful. Like, Fail is smart. That being said, her reaction to that is not the best. She manipulated Loyal into getting her into making sure that she can come along through the ways with them. That's not cool. I love Loyal more, so he'll always win. But then you get this new situation where she's being really petty and like just making Perrin follow her and not really be part of the party going through the ways. And I don't know. And we'll get to it. Anyway, so she's being super petty right now. So I get why Perrin is upset. And then he turns around and he makes a similarly petty move by trying to pretend to have disappeared into the ways. So neither of them are being fantastic people right now. And then this happens. So Phil finds him and she's really angry. And then she slaps him. And then he tells her, I've asked you not to do that. All right. So Perrin has already asked her not to slap him. But then she slaps him again. And then he asks her again not to do that. And the next thing you know, she's punching him. And I'm like, wow, this has escalated so unnecessarily. You just, like, what? And then in the last part of the flashback, the last thing we read is, with a snarl, he seized her by the scruff of her neck, and then it comes back into the present time and it like fades to black, right? And the first time I'm reading this, I'm like, okay, I can fill in some blanks, right? So he grabs her by her collar and she's been slapping him around, so I get that he's angry. And in my head, I fill in the events such that he got a little rough in his response, right? Like maybe he shook her and yelled. That's what I imagine happened when I read this, because I feel like it kind of makes sense, right? Like someone slapping you, you're not just gonna sit there and take it. Like Fail was out of line, and it was not cool, right? And shaking her and yelling at her would also not be cool. None of this is cool. They're both being dumb, but it would be understandable, and it was the logical conclusion that my mind came to. And that's what I thought happened. And I was upset about that. I was like, this is dumb. I hate that Perrin snapped in that way. I love Perrin. I hate that Fail is being so ridiculous. And then I sit back after having read most of this part, and my boyfriend's like, what did you think about that scene? And I was like, it wasn't great, but what you gonna do? Fail was being really, really annoying. And then he was like, but did you understand what happened? And I looked back and he was like, yeah, he was like rough with her, right? He like shook her or something like that. And worst case scenario, I thought he was saying that, implying that maybe he hit her back, like pushed her or something like that. And then he's like, no, read from where it says she had mounted. And so I go back and let's take a look at this sentence together. All right. It says, she had mounted Swallow and sat there very stiff-backed, refusing to sit gingerly, staring at him with an unreadable expression. The important part here is refusing to sit gingerly. which 100% is implying that parents spanked her like an unruly child in like a really weird it's so ridiculous. I don't even get it. And he has thought about it before, and when he's thought about it, I thought this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Okay, because first, whether or not you think that it is okay to spank a child, which I'm not on board for, all right? But just assume that that is a thing that some people think is standard. To apply that kind of technique to someone who's supposed to also be your equal, like, what? It doesn't make any sense, because parent does not, I can't even explain why this is so irritating to me. It bothers me. First, you have the problematic gender relations, right? Where like there is some implied control that parent wants to have over Fail and what she's doing. And then you have the even more problematic nature of him feeling like he can discipline her when she's being unreasonable, right? The idea behind a spanking like that is that it's a form of discipline. But then you get even further, and I'm thinking about how, like, even in really sexist times, you have the situations where you read about how a man can control his wife or discipline her or something like that. His wife, all right? There's another level of commitment there, right? Where there's this relationship, they're married, and so then he has that control over her. All right, so let's even assume we're in some situation like that, which isn't really, it's kind of ambiguous, the relationship between a man and a wife in this world. I don't know that I have a full understanding of what that dynamic is like, especially because this is a world where much of the time women actually do seem to be more in control and more like firm about doing whatever they want. But let's just assume we're in that kind of world. Perrin and Fail aren't even married. So in what world does he have this right? And like it's so irritating. It's also so ridiculous. Like this whole scene, my boyfriend says that a lot of people like to pretend it didn't happen. Well, if you did that, if you cut out this whole page and a half of nonsense right here, it wouldn't be different. Like, it's so subtle and so implied what happened that I feel like it doesn't even need to be there. I didn't even understand what happened the first time I read it. So if it weren't there at all, what would have happened? They would have been mad at each other. And then later they would make up or whatever they're going to do. And then that's the end of it all. Why is this here? And I feel like I got off on a tangent. I mentioned that Perrin had thought about it earlier in the book. So like there's the precedent that Perrin has thought about spanking Fail in a disciplinary way. He has already thought about it. And it was problematic when he thought about it a book ago or several chapters ago, where he thought to himself that maybe he would need to bend her over his knee to set her right or something like that. So that was annoying, but he hadn't done it. And it didn't seem like he was serious about doing it. Like he had this offhand thought of, oh, wouldn't she see how ridiculous she's being if I did that? But not like he was going to do it. And yet it has been done, and it is a dark shadow on this otherwise good, like, I love Perrin and Fail. I know they've got problems. They are not perfect people. And yet, within the scope of this world and all the other less perfect people, Egwene, that exist, I feel like they're all right. And so the fact that they've had this weird skirmish, and one, it's been bumming me out that they're both being so ridiculous. I'm extra bummed out that this is how it was resolved, because it just feels unnecessary and not in the same tone. Like Perrin isn't forceful like that in any other aspect of this whole freaking book. So I don't get it. You know, like even when Perrin is really upset with Vale in the past, he has been mostly just confused and angry. But Perrin has also expressed that he has practiced controlling himself in all kinds of ways, like especially when he moves and in the motions that he makes, because he's really large and so he can easily knock things over, he can easily break things and stuff like that. So like Perrin has a history of intense self-control, and the fact that he loses it like this doesn't make sense to me. I do not like it. Anything else would have been better. Like they could have straight up brawled and I would have felt better about that, because at least they are on equal footing. Like if Perrin hit Phil back and then she hit him, and next thing you know they're like rolling in the grass punching each other, you know what, at least they are equals in their ridiculous fight. But this is not that. It bothers me so much. And then what bothers me almost more is that poor Loyal has been roped into their ridiculous drama. He is here and he's like uncomfortable the whole time. He tried to help and like intervene in what was going on, and then apparently like Fail got angry at him, but then she was just as angry when Bane and Chayad, the two Ale traveling with them, did not interfere. And they I think, even though I don't like the way that it was wrapped up, they had the right thing going on. Like I like the Ale. Basically here it says that Bane said, when you choose the fight, you must take the consequences, win or lose. And yeah, I think that they shouldn't necessarily have stepped in, or that it's okay if they didn't step in if they had actually been fighting. This wasn't a fight though. This was a shift in power. That's what really bothers me. So anyway, that happened. I'm gonna pretend like it didn't to the best of my ability, because I can't. And if it seems to like affect more of the story, then maybe, but it's also, from what my boyfriend says, seems to be this weird isolated incident and then it's gone. And so I just don't get it. And for the moment, I'm gonna pretend that it never happened. So we're gonna move on from that. I hope I might rant about it more. I have just so many feelings were arisen while I was reading this and thinking, what in the world? So that happened. They get out of the ways, right? That's great. Yeah, so they get out of the ways and they're still being ridiculous. Like even once they're out and they're setting up camp, Loyal is now no longer bound to fail the promise he made to her. He completed it, so he doesn't owe her anything. And he starts to move to make camp next to Perrin. And Perrin waves him away like, no, don't anger Fail. She can get upset all she wants. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense why Perrin is tiptoeing around her, because she is being ridiculous. So I kind of feel like if Loyal wanted to set up camp with Perrin, he 100% should get to set up camp with Perrin, because he's not down to deal with Fail's nonsense anymore. And I don't curse in these videos. It's really hard for me not to, because when I was ranting, like 1.0 version of this rant to my boyfriend, there were far more expletives, but I'm gonna keep them out for now. He doesn't want to put up with Fail, right? So why would Loyal not just, what? Fail might be irritated that he's avoiding her now because she's being dumb. Good. Like, I don't like that. Fail is being ridiculous and the Perrin is extra, like, tiptoeing around her. And I don't like that she thinks it's okay to, like, slap him. I don't like this. I felt like at the beginning I thought they were so much better, and I still think that they can come back from it. I think that they'll be all right. I still have it in my heart of hearts that they're going to stop being ridiculous and they're going to be better. Is that going to really happen? I don't know, but I believe it, right? Because I love Fail so much. She wasn't doing this ridiculous superiority thing that all the other women do, like Green and Nave, and half of the older women they run into, like the mistresses in the inns and things like that. They weren't doing that. Fail was so much more awesome. then she got so much less awesome. So I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for things to get better. And you know, they get back and they find people and they're talking. And then things get really sad because Perrin meets up with the mayor and his wife, and they tell him that his whole family is dead because they got attacked by Trollocs, or at least that's the story. It was so dramatic because Perrin is coming down here. He's rushing. He's about to give himself up to the White Cloaks because he doesn't want his association with his family to put them in danger. And then it doesn't even matter because they are already dead. And supposedly, it's not even the White Cloaks that killed them. It's the Trollocs. So that was really sad. And he is trying to like keep talking to them and figure out what's going on, the state of Iman's field, and like not really facing all of his feelings about that situation. And then at the very, very end, the only good thing, where is it? That Fail does is stop the conversation and acknowledge that all of this stuff has happened and that Perrin needs to let himself feel whatever he feels about that. And then he starts to cry and she comforts him or whatever. And that's fine. That's the only good thing she's done in several chapters. But it was so sad. I was not ready for that. Especially because, I don't know, I just didn't expect that to happen. I thought he was going to get there in time and then he didn't. And he has other things that he can do, but that was one of his biggest motivators, was going there to save his family, and now he can't. And then earlier this chapter, we learned that Egwene had sent a total of 3 letters to her mother, which like isn't a ton. So not everyone knows exactly what's going on, but she had sent some response home, and we learned that Perrin hasn't sent any letters home. So he hasn't talked to his family in over a year, and now the first time he gets back home, he learns that they're dead. That's the saddest thing ever. These are some hard chapters to read. That's why I'm going on about this section for 20 minutes when I've spent like 40 during the whole other half of the book. Yeah. Oh, and then big reveal, at least to me, is that earlier in, I think it was this book, but it might have been The Dragon Reborn, a long time ago though, we learned that there's this new guy, Ordeath, who is traveling with the White Cloaks and kind of ordering them around, and he's super sketchy and they think he's kind of evil, but someone even higher up has told them to follow whatever he says. We learn in this chapter that Ordeath is actually Padan Fain, and he is now going by the name Ordeath, and he won't answer to the name Padan Fain, but he is Padan Fain. And that's wild because I was wondering, where did he go? Well, this is where he went. He's now ordering about White Cloaks, and he's trying to, I don't know what he's trying to do. I think he's trying to lure Brand to Eamon's field by like encouraging the White Cloaks to go there, encouraging Trollocs to come to the area and things like that. I think he's the one behind that maneuvering, but I'm not 100% sure. So that's interesting. I don't know what is going to arise from that, or what he's doing. I think he's still serving the Dark One, but he also seems insistent on like rising, like being taken more seriously as like a dangerous, threatening person. So maybe stuff will happen in response to that. I don't know. Eventually, they find some Aes Sedai hiding, and they meet up with Rand's dad and Matt's dad. And I don't know what they're doing now. Oh, the rest of Matt's family, his mother and sisters, got captured by the White Cloaks, and right now they're just being held prisoner, but they're going to go hopefully try to free them and get them loose, and then Perrin also really wants to destroy all the Trollocs in the area. That may or may not be feasible because it seems like there are like a couple hundred in the area, but that's what he wants to do. That's what they're going to go try to do right now, is figure out how they can free the rest of Matt's family. And that's what's going on. So that's where I am in the Shadow Rising. I feel like I haven't had very strong feelings about a lot of the things in this book. It's been very interesting, but in like a very mellow kind of way. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then that's the end. But those chapters really riled me up. And I don't know what I'm thinking about for the next several chapters. I kind of didn't expect Perrin to try to do anything else. I kind of thought he might just leave. But I realize now that he did promise Matt and Rand that he would do whatever he could to watch out for their families as well. He was kind of like their representative to Emon's Field. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Matt and Rand are traveling out of Ruidian, and I don't know what's going to go down. Apparently Matt requested from the Fox people that they give his memories back, and they tried to hang him. That was meeting his request to be away from the One Power and to get out of wherever he was. So I don't know how the request for his memories to get given back will happen and what that means. Like, how is it going to change Matt to know these particular memories, which I believe are supposed to be the ones from when he was tied to the dagger. He had certain like pockets and holes in his memories from that time period, and I wonder how that's going to work out. I don't know. I do think it's interesting that he might get those memories back, because I have been just generally upset by how Matt kind of villainizes Rand sometimes. And I know that he's supposed to be threatening and scary, but it still makes me sad, because I thought they were friends, and then I thought that they had become even better friends while traveling around together in the Eye of the World, because they did a lot of traveling together, and I thought that they were growing closer, and then it doesn't seem to have come to anything. But those are also time periods when Matt had the dagger, and so he doesn't really remember any of that extra bonding with Rand that they did while traveling together, or at least not all of it. And I think we saw one of the first like real cases of Rand starting to be affected by the One Power, like really be affected. There's this part where they come across a fountain and they've been traveling through a desert, so they're super thirsty, and Rand stares at the water and starts laughing like, oh, what a coincidence, there's water here. But then he just stares at it and he doesn't move to take a drink until, well, he stares at it and he's laughing, and he doesn't move to take a drink of it until Matt prompts him to do so. And then later Matt is thinking to himself, how long would he have stood there staring and laughing until like he continued to get dehydrated? How long would he have done that? Would he have done that until he died? Like, what's going on? Why didn't he just drink the water? And is this the start of him unraveling? And I don't know, but it was definitely kind of weird. And I'm 100% always terrified with Rand, because he's one of my favorite characters and I love him so much, and I feel like he's going to not have good stuff happen to him. That's gonna make me sad. So I'm prepared to be sad. And as for the rest of this book, I don't know where we're going. We haven't seen Egwene and Nynaeve in a while. They're heading to Tenchiko, so they're trying to hunt down people from the Black Ajah, and we haven't seen them, so I hope that in this last half we'll probably go back to them for a while at some point. And Tom Marilyn is also traveling with them. So yeah, I think this update has gone on long enough, but I just really wanted to express that I had gotten to that part in this book with the parent fail nonsense, and wow. So I got to that, and hopefully they'll become better people, because I believe in them, and I need them to just really start talking and not being so dumb. Those are my feelings. All right. Bye. Okay, so I think it's been like a week since I've checked in, and I figured that I might as well take the time to sit down and talk about the Shadow Rising today. Mostly, I feel like I don't know what to say these days. I'm kind of waiting to see stuff happen until fairly recently. So Rand is like out of Druidian. He's in the wastes with the ale, and I forget where they're going. He wants to talk to all the clan leaders, but I don't know why. Like, Rand, this whole book has been like, I'm going to have my master plan, and you're going to know what it is in a second. And then he gives you like a tiny part of the plan, but he doesn't explain what or why he's doing it. And then he goes off to start some tiny piece of it. And in his narration, all we're given as the reader is that he's trying to do what they would least expect, because he doesn't want to be like manipulated for someone else's purposes, right? So yeah, that makes sense. But also, I don't know what he's going to do. I also don't know how to guess. So I'm not sure what to expect, and I'm just waiting for Rand to tell me what he's doing. There are some sketchy people. They recently met up with some merchants, and there's this one lady that Rand like doesn't trust her eyes or something like that. But I'm not sure what she might be. Like, I definitely feel like she's a suspicious character, but I don't know suspicious in what way. I keep waiting for another Forsaken to pop up. And then in Perrin's point of view chapters, he was hunting Trollocs, and he had this band of people from Eamon's Field and the Two Rivers, and they were able to successfully like kill some bands of Trollocs while they were sleeping and camping and stuff like that. Perrin's chapters are really interesting because he is in one of the like character situations that I like reading about the most, where you kind of have this character thrust into some kind of situation that like maybe they don't even want to be in, but the circumstances of the situation mean that they have to evolve into a stronger figurehead. Like, they have to be like a reluctant leader. And I really, really like that character setup, because I feel like it's where we see some of the most interesting and dramatic kinds of character growth. So for example, Rand in The Great Hunt, I talked on and on in that vlog video about how I really liked Rand gaining more confidence over the Great Hunt, wearing his clothes more proudly, and like letting people call him Lord, and starting to kind of order people about a little as they looked at him as more of a leader, and just kind of falling into that role and like not doing a horrible job of it, right? At least so far. So I really liked that. And with Perrin's point of view chapters now in the Shadow Rising, I think we're seeing a really similar situation, because the people of Eamon's Field are looking to him a lot. And Perrin doesn't really like that. He still thinks of himself as a simple blacksmith, but obviously that's just not the case anymore. He is Taviran, so his word and his actions are going to shape the world pretty much no matter what he does. And two, he's just grown so much more. Like, he has a much better idea of the scope of the world and the scope of the danger than the Eamon's Field residents do. And it's not even that great a scope, right? Like, there's a lot Perrin doesn't know and doesn't understand, but he definitely knows more. So the people of Eamon's Field are like asking him for permission for things, and they want to follow him around, and they just want him to lead. And Perrin, because he cares about Eamon's Field, kind of has no choice but to do it, because the people are going to be lost and stalemate unless he tells them what to do. But he also does it so well. Like, he's become so comforting. Like, I feel like Perrin currently is underestimating how valuable just the comfort from having someone to follow can be, especially if you're scared. So the people of Eamon's Field, yeah, they know they need to fortify the boundary or something like that. And yeah, they know that children should play in this area and not this area. And these small things that they come to parent for, they know the things that have to be done. And parent is like, if they know what has to be done, why do they keep asking me? But it's different to know what you think should be done in a situation, and then to have someone to go to confirm, yes, that's the right thing to do. You know, especially when you're in such an unusual situation like they are now, where there's so like Trollocs are everywhere. The White Cloaks are kind of breathing down their necks, and the world is changing. So you've got these people who have been secluded in their tiny town forever. Nothing ever changes, no one ever leaves. And then suddenly things start changing. And then suddenly one of the people who they do know has left and then come back. So he has so much more weight because he knows what the world is like outside, and they really don't, even if they know their world. So I 100% see why they would defer to him. Especially since he's one of the people I think they can trust. Like, Perrin genuinely has the interests of Emansfield at heart, whereas someone like this Lord Luke character is kind of poking around, but he is really suspicious, and I don't know what his motives are or fully understand where he came from or what he wants and what he's doing. He's suspicious. So yeah, they could also kind of put Lord Luke into this position and whatever, but they aren't really doing that as much. They respect him a lot. They seem to think he's pretty cool, but not in the same way that they have responded to Perrin. And I appreciate that. I like Perrin. So that has been super interesting. And then Perrin got injured when there were some Trollocs, and their trackers thought they were coming in one direction, but then somehow the Trollocs attacked from behind, and they were not ready for that. So Perrin got injured. He almost died, and now he's recovering. And I said I got to him in time, but there were some really cute moments of Fael taking care of Perrin while he's injured that are just so good. So they've come back. They're not perfect. I don't think that the gender relations in the Wheel of Time are ever going to give me a romantic pairing. I'm going to be like, yes, this is absolutely perfect, because wow, there are so many weird things in the Wheel of Time. But nevertheless, I do still very much like Fael and Perrin together. Despite my previous rant about the situation and the ways I think that they're just so cute together. So that was a lot of fun to read. And now they're planning for an even bigger Trolloc attack. Like, they feel like they've killed lots of Trollocs, but they've probably only killed a tiny fraction of the Trollocs that are probably out there or gathering. And so they're kind of on edge and waiting for something bigger to happen. And that's kind of where the sequence for Perrin's chapters end, more or less. Elaine and Nynaeve. We got a chapter or two from Elaine's perspective, and it was super wild. It was called A Cup of Wine, and in it, Elaine gets super drunk. And at first, I was really suspicious about why she got so drunk. Like, she seemed really confident in her ability that she knows how much to drink, and she only ever has one cup of wine, and yet somehow she was like really messed up. So I thought that someone had manipulated her in some way, maybe drugged her wine. So far, that doesn't seem to be the case. It does seem like she might have just accidentally drunk too much, but it's not quite clear to me yet that that's exactly what happened. Nevertheless, while super drunk, she confronts Tom Marilyn and learns for sure that he was a lover of her mother, the queen, and like she has memories from being a child of seeing him like hanging out with them. So that was interesting. And then when she goes back to her room, Nynaeve is angry at her for being so drunk because they need to get into Tel'aran'rhiod in order to talk to Egwene. And so Nynaeve is just like, why are you so drunk? Why did you do this? And her solution is to dunk her head in water and hold it there repeatedly. She does not actually drown her, but she definitely makes Elaine kind of afraid, super uncomfortable, and ultimately she vomits. And I thought she was going to murder her. When this first happened, when Nynaeve dunks Elaine's head into the bucket, my first thought was, oh my god, that's not Nynaeve. This is an assassination attempt. And that's not what happened. So that was a little disappointing. I was waiting for something wild, and it was just Nynaeve being the worst, like she always is. So I don't even know why I was surprised. And I kind of get her motives. I mean, Elaine did vomit up all of the stuff that she had consumed, so I'm sure that aided in her recovery somewhat, so that she was a little more clear-headed. At least that's what it seemed to be the outcome. Still, it was super violent and super sudden, and I feel like there are so many other ways she could have gotten her to vomit up what she had consumed. So while I kind of see it, I also am just not a Nynaeve fan, so I'm not willing to give her a ton of forgiveness. So that was super abrupt, but it kind of worked in that Elaine was able to stand watch while Nynaeve went into Teleranrioid and didn't find Egwene, but she did find this sketchy character who tried to shoot at her that looked kind of like Lan, but wasn't Lan, couldn't have been. And then later, Perrin is going through and he finds this sketchy character, and he's described the same way that the man that Nynaeve saw. So Perrin has been referring to him as Slayer. There's some man in the dream world and in the real world that is killing. Right now it seems like it's just wolves or wildlife or something, but he's doing something weird, and he has attacked both Perrin and Nynaeve now, so he's definitely a sketchy character. And then both, I think Nynaeve and Perrin also maybe have also seen a woman who Nynaeve named as Bridget or something, this like heroic mythical character in the dreams, but she and Perrin, I think, have both seen her. So there are two like other Dreamwalker people that are uncertain about who they are, what they are, etc. Also interesting is Ordith. I don't know if I've said it already, but I thought that he was a Forsaken. It turns out he's just Padan Thane, who is now like morphed with Mordeth and extra evil. And he's out there being sketchy, but Lord Luke asked after him when they had a confrontation with the White Cloaks, and he wanted to know if Ordith was at the scene of a town that got pillaged by Trollocs. So that's interesting, because I don't know what their connection might be. Like, it's a weird name. The Emond's Field people know him as Padan Thane, but Lord Luke definitely was like Ordith. So I don't know why he would be interested in him either. But not cool is that when we saw Ordith's perspective when hanging out with the White Cloaks a few chapters ago, we definitely got information that seemed to imply that Ordith is the one that orchestrated the pillaging of Perrin's family's farm and the murder of his family. So the story is that Trollocs did it, but the chapter seems to imply that Ordith was responsible. So that's super not cool. And I don't know why he would be targeting Perrin so specifically. I mean, yeah, I don't know what his long-term goals are. Like, he's a dark friend. I can get why he might want Perrin or Rand there. He definitely seems to want to draw Rand to the Two Rivers, or at least the White Cloaks do, or maybe both. I don't know. Maybe the White Cloaks that are dark friends. But killing Perrin's whole family? He didn't even get the news that this happened before he got there. So, like, I don't know. It was really weird. And I don't know what is driving him. You know, and I do tend to get caught up in any given story on why characters are doing things, especially if they're evil. So, like, if there's a character and they're evil and they're a villain, I want to know what they want. And in a lot of cases, and maybe not necessarily this case, but you've got a lot of characters who like they just want power, or they just want land, or they just want like chaos or something like that. Like they're just evil. And that's never a good enough explanation for me. And so I get really hung up on those kinds of details. Even if they are, sometimes that's all it is. Like a character just wants to be powerful. That's really hard for me to wrap my head around, because it's so far from like my own experience. Like it's really hard for me to imagine being obsessed with power. So those motivations are hard for me to empathize with and really understand a character's actions, because then I just start questioning it and the story doesn't feel finished to me. Even if it's like not the story's fault, like the main basis of the story has been addressed in it, but I get hung up on the why a little more than I think is always necessary, and I know that. But yeah, so some of these questions might not have more than their evil as an answer, but still, there are 10 books I haven't read, so I'm gonna keep a lookout. Alright, so it's about time that I wrap up my reading vlog for The Shadow Rising. This is like a week after I actually finished the book, and the only reason I finally sat down to do it now is because I have my filming set up for a completely different video that I just filmed, and now I'm still sitting here, so I figured I might as well talk about it. The end of The Shadow Rising was wild. I don't remember where I left off in my last clip. I don't remember exactly where I was in the book, but I'm pretty sure that we had about 5 or 6 chapters that we read all in one go the night that we finished it, and that was a wild time. We had about 120 pages left, and we agreed to finish it that night that we decided to finish it. We started reading at like 9 p.m. and then it wasn't like the most efficient reading experience, right? We stopped between every chapter to talk about the chapter, or sometimes even in the middle, like if something wild happens, there'll be a tangent where we're both like, what? Did you see that? How could this happen? And then we also took breaks to clean in the kitchen a little bit and make tea. So it was not just straight reading. However, I'm still so shocked by the fact that we didn't finish until almost 4 a.m. So I have been trying to get on an earlier sleeping schedule, and that blew that completely out of the water. My schedule has basically been wrecked ever since. But it was worth it. Okay, the ending of The Shadow Rising was so good. It has hands down 2 of my favorite chapters in it so far, and probably 2 of my favorite chapters for the rest of the series. I'll be so surprised if they get completely knocked out of like the top 5 maybe chapters by these next few books, because they were so good. All right, so basically our main chapter point of views and the ones that I've been most interested in have been Perrin and Rand, right? So Rand is out there in the Ale Waste with the ale, and he's trying to gather all the clan chiefs into this place to like declare himself the Dragon Reborn and get them to follow him. But oh my god, Couladin is the worst. Okay, so Couladin is this other guy who's like part of the Ale, and he has been super upset with Rand because Rand's coming in. He doesn't see him as a true Ale because he didn't grow up with the Ale, and he's just this wetlander that's walking in, declaring himself all powerful, getting respect, and he got to go to Ruidian, but Couladin didn't get to go to Ruidian, and then Couladin's brother got down there and he died there. So he's convinced that Rand murdered him while they were down there, and he just really doesn't like Rand. And when Couladin was first being a problem, my boyfriend was like, hey, what do you think about Couladin? And I was like, nothing. I don't think anything about Couladin. Like, yeah, he's being whiny and super annoying and he's angry and aggressive, but I didn't expect him to mobilize on that, you know, to like do anything with all that anger and energy. And then we get to the meeting, and Couladin had left early, so Rand was staying in this like little place. I can't remember where he was, but he was like waiting because all the clan chiefs weren't going to get to the meeting place for another few weeks, and he didn't want to get there before they had all gotten there. Otherwise it would make others feel bad, or it would seem disrespectful or something. So he was waiting for everyone to get there, but then Couladin snuck out in the night and left early. And so Rand heads out because he doesn't want Couladin to get there early and start turning all the other clan chiefs against him and like have weeks ahead of him of like working with and essentially networking with all the other clan chiefs until they support whatever plan Couladin has hatched up more than they support Rand. And Rand really needs the Ale on his side. So he also heads out earlier than expected to go catch up with everybody and make sure that Couladin doesn't do too much damage. And then he gets there and he's trying to declare himself, or he's getting ready to declare himself the Dragon Reborn. And for the Ale, one of the most visible keys to that is that when he got through Ruidian, dragon marks appeared on his arms. And supposedly you can't fake those. Like earlier in the book, someone said that it's impossible to like make those up. So as soon as you show them to people, they're gonna believe you, because like what else couldn't they do? But then Couladin shows up and he's like, no, I am the Dragon Reborn. I went into Ruidian, and he holds up his arms. He also has the dragon symbols. And I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, what did he think was going to happen? You know, like, he's not the Dragon Reborn. So how long was he going to be able to keep this up when he doesn't have any channeling power? He didn't actually go into Ruidian. He doesn't have anything, you know? He's just out there sowing chaos and like hating Grand mostly and wanting to be a clan chief. Like Couladin has really been wanting some power and he doesn't have it. So that was wild. Rand pops up and he also has the dragon markings, and so now people are like, what? There can't be two. And then Rand is like, well, Couladin, what did you see in Ruidian? And that's supposed to prove to the other clan chiefs who actually went in, right? Because Rand did go in, and so he can actually talk about how he went in and he saw the history of the Ale through his ancestors' eyes. But Couladin has no idea what really happens in Ruidian because they don't talk about it beyond those who have already been there, which I don't agree with, but we'll get to that. So Couladin starts talking about how he would never reveal what he saw there because Ruidian is sacred. And then Rand is like, well, I learned about all of this, and I learned that the Ale actually come from the Way of the Leaf people and the traveling people and stuff. And that floored everyone. For whatever reason, the Ale are so overcome when they learn that they are people who come from the Way of the Leaf, and that they are like essentially, they had this way of living and then they kind of broke off from it. And I don't get that. I don't get why they're so torn up about it. Like, Couladin's brother is in there and he's learning the same things that Rand is learning. And as Rand is passing him while going through Ruidian, he like sees him tearing out his eyes and like he's dying. He basically kills himself because of how something he feels over this. And my boyfriend has tried to explain it to me multiple times about why it makes sense that the Ale are so powerfully impacted by this knowledge, but it's really hard for me to empathize with because they are so, it just seems like a random thing to me. Like the Ale in my mind are so removed from that event, like history, so much time has passed, that they're a completely different civilization, and it makes perfect sense that they can have as much pride in their civilization as it is and in what it has become from what it was. Like the fact that it came from the Way of the Leaf and things like that doesn't negate the fact that they are now this proud warrior people. And yet for whatever reason, it really bothers them to the point where the clan chiefs deliberately withhold this information from them, and it's a big secret because they don't want people to freak out. And that's what happens as soon as Rand says it. Like, now people know where they came from, or at least have some more of an idea than they did before, and they lose it completely. I don't get it. It really feels like the clan chiefs are just babying their people. Like, why can't they just get over it? I know that sounds harsh. Like, I'm sure there's definitely stuff there that I'm not properly appreciating, but there are so many other things going on. So that is happening, and now the Ale know that they weren't always the Ale exactly as they are, and Rand did prove to the clan chiefs that he is actually the Dragon Reborn, and they call him something else. He who comes with the dawn, and another word that's there to the sea. And so that's happening, and Rand is trying to prove that he is who he is. But then there's this like other weird confrontation, because he says this truth about the Ale, and then people start fighting with each other, and then suddenly Lanfear is there. I don't know where she came from. Rand had been traveling with these merchant people through the Ale Waste, and Lanfear was disguised as one of them. And basically she's like, why are you destroying all of my hard work? And I can't remember or know if I fully understood her whole plot, but basically she was trying really hard to get Asmodean to tutor Rand, essentially. And Asmodean was also disguised as one of the other traveling peoples, and something about what Rand did freaked him out or challenged him or scared him off. It's been a whole week. That's something I'd have to refresh on before I read it again. But basically, Lanfear is mad because Rand's moves are going against her own scheming and her own plotting. And then suddenly Rand is like able to portal himself with like the power. He makes this portal and he goes in, and there's Asmodean, who was disguised as the Gleeman, I think it was the Gleeman that they had in the traveling merchant band thing. And they're there, and Rand is fighting him. Wow, it has been way too long since I read this. But they get into this confrontation, and at the end of it all, Rand is able to shield Asmodean from the one power enough that he's like almost powerless, I believe. And so Rand has been manipulating everything because he'd hoped that if he made these weird moves with the Ale and like drew attention to himself or something, that Lanfear and Asmodean would ultimately get there to where he was, and he could manipulate things such that he would force Asmodean to be his tutor. And so Asmodean is now basically powerless. He can't go back to the other Forsaken because he was like beaten, and people are going to be really skeptical about how he got into this weird position. And it would be too easy for Rand and Lanfear to just tell them that Asmodean has defected from the Dark One, and then he would be a target. So basically, Asmodean has been backed into a corner to be Rand's tutor. Lanfear is kind of annoyed with Rand because he's doing whatever he wants, but whatever he wants is not like being with her and taking over the world. So she's losing some patience, but she leaves him with Asmodean. And while they're doing this battle thing, Rand actually finds two little figurines that actually are like angrials or terangrials. They're like 2 or 3 different words for like different types of magical artifacts, and he is finding 2 of them, one that can be powered by Satan and the other that can be powered by Sadar, the male and the female halves of the one power. And he just kind of takes them with him. Lanfear's been looking for one of them, but he doesn't tell her that it's there. And then he uses the other to finally beat Asmodean when they were in their confrontation. And so he takes it, the 2 little artifacts, and he takes Asmodean, and he's like, all right, well, let's go back. And Asmodean gets a new name. I forget what it is, but basically he just continues to pretend to be the Gleeman from this merchant group, because otherwise people are going to know he's one of the Forsaken, because his name is pretty famous in like the lore. So they go back, and by the time they get back, Couladin has taken some amount of the Ale who support him over Rand, and they've kind of gone off to do their own thing. And then Rand is back, and he has the support of some of the Ale, a good chunk of them. and he sets out to do whatever his next step is. And I think the idea behind the Ale support is that Rand really needs people behind him and fighting for him, not because they are afraid of him, like people in Tyr, and also not because they want to manipulate him, like he believes the people in the White Tower and the Aes Sedai want to manipulate him. So he's hoping that the Ale will fight for him because of like what he is and what he is going to set out to do, or something like that. But his relationship with the Ale is also really complicated because the prophecy says that he's going to bring them together and also kind of destroy them. So by the end of it all, very few of the Ale are said to be remaining, and it's not clear what that means. Like, are they literally all going to die somehow? Is he going to bring them a physical destruction or something else? Because now that I know about the history of the Ale and how they came from like the traveling people and the Way of the Leaf, I feel like it also makes sense for Rand's revelation and the schism between people who support Rand and people who support Couladin to actually lead to some kind of other cultural revolution for the Ale, such that they are no longer the Ale as they were, and there's some other things. So like the Ale are destroyed, the Ale being that culture, but the people are there, they're just doing something else now, if that makes sense. So that's like one of the ideas I'm playing around with. I feel like one of the things that people have told Rand to be careful about in prophecies is that they aren't always explicit, like they're not always straightforward in what they're saying. So yes, the Ale might be destroyed, but destroyed could have a few different meanings depending on what you consider the Ale, like the physical people or the cultural idea of the Ale. So I don't know how that's going to go. But my two favorite chapters were with Perrin. And so Perrin has been over in Eamon's field, and he has been fighting Trollocs, and they're getting ready for a big battle. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of Trollocs on their way over. Perrin's got himself like 1,000 people, maybe 700, and the odds are not looking good. So he comes up with this dumb story about how he needs Fael to go to Camelin, I believe, to give a message to the queen so that she can send reinforcements. But Fael is not dumb, and so she's like, wait a second, that would take me weeks. It would take so long for me to get there, give the message, get the recruits, and then like come back. And Perrin's like, yeah, it would take a long time, but psh, no worries, we can hold them off for that long. That's a downright lie. Like, tensions have been building in Eamon's field. They cannot hold off the Trollocs for weeks. And from the beginning, it's like not certain that Fael actually believes him, but she goes off on this journey anyway. And at first I thought that she was doing it just to like give him some peace of mind, right? Because Fael obviously can hold her own, and she has also been really big about not just being sent away. Like, Perrin has been trying to send her away to protect her, and she's like, you don't need to protect me, Jesus, just let me stay here with you. And that has been the main source of a lot of their petty arguments and squabbles in this past book, and it's been pretty annoying. Both of them can get really into it, but then I thought that maybe because the stakes were so high, Fael decided not to fight with him because the stakes are high enough that if he's at all distracted, it's just way more likely for him to get hurt. And so she was like, one more person versus increasing the chances of Perrin being okay, I guess I'll go on this dumb mission. That's kind of where I was thinking things are going to go. And then the battle starts, and they hold off the Trollocs for a while, but like not really. And Perrin had an agreement with the White Cloaks that they were going to stay in Eamon's field and fight, and at the end of the battle, if they won, then they could arrest Perrin, kill him, do whatever they wanted, and he wasn't going to resist. But they're nowhere to be found. So they are also short hundreds of bodies that they thought they were going to have going into this battle, and things are looking super grim. But then Fael comes back, and she brings people from some hill, like another town over basically. Fail just walked over there, talked to them about what was happening, convinced them that they needed to come help and really once and for all get rid of the Trollocs, because the Trollocs are attacking Iman's field right now, but they have been terrorizing the surrounding area. So she gets a lot more men to come in. Also, earlier in the book, we see this messenger guy get to Iman's field, but before he can get there and talk to Perrin, he dies. The last words he says are, "They're coming," or "We are coming," and it wasn't clear at the time who was coming. But then people from Devon Ride also come in. So they have reinforcements in like this darkest hour, and it was so dramatic and it was so good because Fail was one of the people who brought in the reinforcements, and I was so excited because oh my god. Like I get that Perrin is worried about Fail. I get that. At the same time, Fail is not dumb. She can make her own informed decisions, and also maybe if Perrin didn't hide things from her and just send her off to do things, he could actually talk to her and maybe she would have good ideas that could help the situation in ways that he's not seeing, even beyond just her fighting. Like he doesn't want her out there fighting. Great, fine, but that doesn't mean that she's not going to be able to help you out with a strategy you're not seeing yet or something like that, you know? Like he doesn't even approach those conversations, and that really irritates me. It irritates me so much because Fail is so smart. Like she's very clever, and so then I've been saying this multiple times throughout the book. I was thinking it the whole time. I've told my boyfriend 2 or 3 times, like, why is Perrin sending Fail away? She can help if he would just listen to her. And then here she is riding out into the dark, riding out of the forest with her army that she brought over because Perrin didn't say, hey, maybe instead of trying to go all the way to Camelin for an army, we just tried to get help from nearby villages. No, Perrin didn't do that. He didn't even seem to think about it. Why? But Fail did it, and so she saved him, and they were all okay. And I was so happy because oh my god, those were the 2 hardest chapters ever. There was the one chapter, and then the chapter that Perrin asks her to go off to Camelin, she only agrees if he agrees to marry her that night, and that was so cute. And they got married, and then the next chapter started, and it was so sad because Fail had left by then, and Perrin is thinking about how apparently one of the marriage traditions is that he's wearing like this red ribbon on himself, like around his neck or something, that just tells other people he's a newlywed. And before she left, Fail was trying to put one in his beard and he wouldn't let her do that. And at the beginning of this chapter, he's thinking about how he wishes he had just let her put the ribbon in, and it's so sad. And when they were getting married, Perrin was saying his vows, and he was also thinking to himself how all the ways he wasn't going to be able to keep them because of the situation they were in. Like there's one thing where he says, will keep you forever or something like that, and then he thinks to himself, well, actually I can't hold on to that because I'm about to send you away. And it was so sad. It was heartbreaking, but then it was all okay. So it's like it made the resolution and them being all okay so much better, because for a while I thought that they were really not going to be okay, and then they were okay, and I am so happy. I loved the paragraph or 2 when Fail first arrives at the battle with all of her like people that she's recruited behind her. I thought that was so powerful. Like I was like, yes, I was so excited. And then they won the battle, and then like Perrin and Fail go off to celebrate, and it was so good. Oh my god, I loved it. I loved them so much. I know that they aren't perfect, but love them, and I just don't want anything bad to happen to them. I feel like this thing that Eamon's field is already so tense. And I don't know what else is going to happen. I have been told by my boyfriend, and I'm glad that he told me, because I would have just been sad if I didn't already know, that in the next book we get like no perspective from Perrin. Like I think he's just gone in this book. All the other characters are doing stuff and we don't know what he's doing, or he's doing nothing. Who knows? But that's okay. That's okay. He and Theo could be safe in Iman's field, and I'll be cool with that. The story could end here. Like, I just don't want anything bad to happen to them. And then you got a few other things hanging out in the air. Ordeus/Padan Vane was trying to lure Rand to Iman's field. That's what this whole Trolloc business was about. And they defeated the Trollocs, and so his plan has not been going well. I don't know what he wants with Rand other than to like kill him because murder, he's evil or something like that. And then you've also got this Lord Luke character who is super suspicious because in the dream world, Perrin had this confrontation with the guy he has been calling Slayer, who was killing wolves and things in the dream world and then also in the real world. And Perrin actually manages to land a blow on him. And then later we see that Lord Luke is actually last seen riding through Iman's field looking injured in the same place. So there's this like, is Lord Luke Slayer? Who are either of them? Like, where did they come from? What do they want? I don't really know. Where did he go? That's unclear. And then I'm just waiting to see what else happens with that. And it was also pretty wild because this character in the I think it's Lord Luke, or not Lord Luke, I think it's Slayer in the dream world, is said to look a lot like Lan, which is super weird, right? Like, it seems to come out of nowhere that this random person in these dreams looks a lot like Lan, who's supposed to be like the last of his people. But there's this like poem prophecy thingy in another book, and my boyfriend just had me read it 2 or 3 times, and I never get whatever he's trying to show me from it. But the most recent time I read it, I noticed that they talk about how there's this guy, a king or a brother or cousin or some relation to Lan, was thought to be dead, but actually no one knows what happened to his body. So like, he could be alive. He could be this guy that we're seeing. I don't really know. I don't know. It's really weird, but it's interesting. And my boyfriend keeps telling me to go back to the different prophecies and things that we see in different parts of the books because he's like, they're relevant, and Robert Jordan is writing because he kind of expects you to go back and like reread things and look up at the prophecies again. And that's really hard for me because that is not my reading style. Like, I just read and I'm just waiting to see what happens. Like, I'm not trying to decide what's about to happen, and little details I'm not trying to memorize or remember in the long run because they're either one, not going to matter a ton and not affect my overall understanding of the book, or 2, they're important enough that the author is going to remind you of them. Like, when something happens that's related to a prophecy, you know, you like often have the character remember, oh, this line from a prophecy as he's looking at this thing that fulfills the prophecy. Like, that's such a common reading setup that I kind of rely on it, maybe a little too much. And so I don't go back to the things that I maybe should, or would at least inform my reading a little more if I was more familiar with those prophecies and things. And I don't know, maybe I'll do more of that. But yeah, so that was one of the things that I noticed the last time I read that prophecy. We have also seen a lot of things happen for Perrin. Before he left at the beginning of The Dragon Reborn, Min told him about some things that she had seen around him, and we've seen a lot of them, like an ailment in a cage, and a hawk, and a falcon, and a couple other things. So Perrin's prophecies are coming true. But speaking of Min, she's been hiding out in the White Tower, and I don't know if I've talked about this already, but she's been there. She's been pretending to be this like high lady that is in hiding because she has 2 suitors that are like aggressively trying to get her to pick between them, and she doesn't want to, so she's just kind of hanging out in the White Tower. But she's there when some wild stuff happens in the White Tower. Basically, one of the people, one of the Red Sisters, I think, like has this council meeting thing with like the minimum number of people who are also apparently highly manipulatable, because they get together and they vote out Shan Shin, or the Amerlin seat. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but they vote her out and she gets kicked out and she gets charged as a dark friend, and they're going to still her. Oh no, they do still her. I forgot about that. So they had stilled her. She's in this like jail. She and her writer, scribe, organizer person, both of them got stilled and they got sent into this jail, and Min eventually helps them break out. And now both of them are dealing with the fact that they got stilled, which is super intense, because apparently like someone's connection to the one power, when that's taken away, it makes them feel so much less, and like they're so much less alive that ultimately those people tend to want to die anyway, and so they just kind of wither away, you know, like they're not the same people at all anymore. And the Amerlin seat, or the old Amerlin seat, and her advisor person are hanging on now because they want to get revenge on the people who kicked them out. And that's so wild, because I don't know. Also, it's kind of weird because I feel like the Amerlin seat and everything that happened at the White Tower has to be in some way related to the Black Aja. Like, people knew that the Black Aja were out there, and that's cool. But then Elaine and Nynaeve and Egwene were sent out as part of the Amerlin seat's like secret task force to find the Black Aja. And they've been hunting Leandrin and her people, and that's how they got to Tanchico. And Elaine and Nynaeve were down there. They were able to get a collar thing, like the kinds that they Shan Chan used to control people, the female channelers, but this one can work on a man. And so this thing is meant to control Rand. The Black Aja was looking for it because they wanted to be able to make Rand do whatever they wanted him to do. And they get it and they throw it into the bottom of an ocean. And then there was something else they got there. They also confronted one of the Forsaken, or Nynaeve did, and she was able to like more or less defeat her. She was able to get her completely frozen and at her mercy, but she also didn't think to like do anything more to incapacitate her, and so somehow she escaped. So there's like this big confrontation going down, right? And they've been looking for Leandrin and her people. Leandrin is one of the people who manipulated them into leaving the White Tower and was responsible for getting Egwene caught by the Shan Chan and all the things she suffered while caught by them. And so they've got this thing against the Black Aja, right? Which is like, I get it, they're terrible, but they've been like really far from the White Tower trying to hunt down these people, and admittedly it's pretty hard to balance, right? Because they were looking for these things, and this weapon could have made them able to control Rand, and that would not have been cool because then Rand would be controlled. So that was dangerous. But it also means that there was no one at the White Tower whose like job was to look for the Black Aja, and so now the Amerlin seat has been usurped, and it was this like insane bloody battle, which Min saw when she first arrived at the tower, or at least I think she saw. Maybe she saw something else, but she definitely saw people who were all getting hurt at the same time, and then she also saw these people get hurt during this battle. So that's happening. The Amerlin seat is out, and I don't know where they're gonna go now, or what they're gonna do. Oh my gosh. Okay. But I've been talking about this longer than I expected to, so I will wrap this up. I did give the Shadow Rising 5 stars. So I feel like overall I've been seating the Wheel of Time at around 4 stars, but I really like the Shadow Rising. And it's really interesting because it took me forever to read it. I was really tired a lot of the time of being in the Wheel of Time world. Like, it was just tiring, and I was really wanting something different, so it took me a long time to get through the book because at any given time I only wanted to read 1 or 2 chapters. But by the end of it, I was like, oh my god, so much happened. It was so good. So I gave it 5 stars. Technically, it's a real loose rating system of mine. It's not great, but that's what I gave it. And now it's been like a week since I finished it, and my boyfriend and I are reading Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski, and I'm already missing The Wheel of Time. Like, both of us are ready to read it somewhere. So after Season of Storms, we will probably read The Fires of Heaven. So I don't know what the delay is going to be on these vlogs. I just did the Dragon Reborn vlog, and then I got this one together. I'm expecting like one of these every month-ish. Oh, so good. So The Shadow Rising, I'm loving Perrin and Fail. That's my takeaway. It's like not even the biggest plot thread that's going on in the book, but it's my favorite so far, and I'm excited to see what's going on. Other things happened, not as much. I don't know what's going on with Matt. He was taking a back seat mostly for this book. He had some stuff go on earlier, but by the end, for this last chunk, he was just kind of hanging out. And I don't know. I'm glad to hear that nothing terrible is going to happen to Perrin and Fail in the next book, because they're not in it. So that's fine. I can work with that. Rand has the ale now. I'm hoping that Min and the Amerlin Seat people will meet up with Rand somehow or some way, just because I want to see Min and Rand together. Like, Min is technically in love with Rand, but like, I don't see it. We didn't see them together. There was time at the beginning of the Dragon Reborn, and like between the Great Hunt and the Dragon Reborn, where they had been together at this camp with the people from Valdara, and so presumably they spent time together then, but I didn't see it, so it doesn't feel real to me. So I'd like for them to get back together, just so that I can justify this weird situation happening between them. I'm really tired of Elaine. Yeah, so that's my summary, and I'm excited for the next book. So thank you so much for watching this vlog. I am very excited to see what's going to happen next, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.